and sleep in?
Yeah, so really on these trips, I figure you're either hiking or you're in your sleeping bag. So I don't pack much stuff for when I'm in camp. And all I had were I brought two pairs of socks, of which I usually would only wear one, but sometimes if I had a lot of blisters, I might wear two. So only two pairs of socks, and then I did bring gaiters, and I had a pair of lightweight long underwear bottoms and a Gore-Tex shell over that. That's all I brought for bottoms. And then on the top, I had a lightweight turtleneck long sleeve synthetic shirt. Um, I had a couple fleeces, and then I had my Gore-Tex shell, which is a marmot shell that I've had for years. And then over top of that, a Patagonia Nano Puff with a hood. And besides that, I had a lightweight pair of gloves that were waterproof, not really insulated, and then a pair of heavier mitts that were insulated for the colder days. Basically, other than that, I had a alpinist hat that I've had for years. So really pretty light. The only thing, some days I'd be hiking in everything except my synthetic. And basically when I got to camp, I'd put my synthetic puffy on and I'd be running around camp until I got cold enough, and then I'd just get in my sleeping bag.
All right, cool. And so let's talk about food now. What did you guys bring for food? How'd you break down, the calories that you're going to want to have with you? And what did that food look like?
So we figured we're gonna be burning about 5 to 6,000 calories a day, which is about what we did, I think. Uh, the Fitbit said like on average 6,500 calories a day we were burning. So we knew that we couldn't pack 5,000 calories of food a day. That would just be absurd, and it would kind of weigh too much for what we were trying to do. So I think we tried to pack about 2,000 calories a day to 2,500 or 2,000 calories a day, which was pretty much granola, like oatmeal breakfast that we'd take out of the heavy container and just put into like a plastic bag. And then we would have snack food throughout the day, which would just consist of like bars, like meat, like pepperoni. I had peanuts, some candy too, and which was a good amount per day, I would say. Is definitely, I wasn't too stingy on the snack food. And then we would have freeze-dried Mountain House meal for dinner.
All
And that
right,
was pretty much the day.
sure. So you guys definitely had some cookware with you as well, then.
Yes.
And what'd you bring for that?
Dad, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So what we had for the cook gear is I have an XGK MSR stove, which I've used on multiple expeditions. I like them because they really they run on white fuel. I've used them for years. I can take them apart in the field if I need to fix them. And it's something I trust. And I really have dialed in the amount of fuel that I need for cooking each night and whatever else I need. So I had a titanium pot. I can't remember the make, but I remember going back and forth between two pots about 6 months ago, and one was like, I don't know, you get down into the grams and how many grams lighter this one is than this one, but it's about 1.5 liters, very uber light, really, and I have a little handle to pick it up and pour, and besides that, I have a little mini lighter. And that's really it for cooking. We each had a spoon. That's it for, besides the two fuel canisters that we brought, and one of them had a pump inside of it. But that's all we had for cooking.
All right, don't need much more than a spoon, so that works perfectly. Great. So let's get to the actual hike. Let's go to the trail. So day 1, which was March 8th, 2021. You guys started around 8:50 a.m. You were hiking this trail northbound, so you were down in Northville hiking up to Lake Placid. So take me through it. We'll start with right at the trailhead. What'd you guys experience? How'd the day go? And take me through where you guys went to.
Yeah, Henry, I'll take this one. So,
Yep.
So yeah, we started in Northville, right at the trailhead. Well, not the trailhead, but the Arches in a parking lot right across from Stewart's there. And we brought our car up and we packed everything, weighed everything, and we left there at 8:50 a.m. This is a Monday morning, and this was on March 8th. And after hiking through the streets and everything else, we got to the Shaker Mountain Trailhead around 10 a.m., signed in there, and then we launched out onto the trail knowing that, okay, we had done this about a month earlier when we were attempting to do this trail, and it was we had much better conditions this time. When we had done this a month earlier, it had snowed 3 inches of super wet snow, and it was kind of raining on us when we started. And so, and the first time we went about 15 and a half miles the first day. So we knew what this first day was like. We had just done it a month earlier. So really, for anyone that's hiked this, you start out, you're going uphill for a little while. And the first big milestone we wanted to come over was going over West Stony Creek. And as soon as we got there, we knew it'd be frozen. So we were able to just go over that pretty quickly. It's 90 feet wide, and it was much easier this time than it was a month earlier. A month earlier was a little sketchy, and we did make it across, but boy, it's something you wouldn't want to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
When we started out, temperature was about 12 degrees or so, and it was sunny early on, clouded up in the afternoon, but it was definitely, it was a great day of hiking. And I know once we crossed over West Stony Creek, there was a relief, because that's the first that was the crux of the day. We were like, okay, let's get across there. And that went really well. And we continued hiking. We hiked about 9 hours that day. Then we crossed the road. What was unique is as we were going, we passed at maybe 15 and a half, 16 miles, the place we had camped right beside the trail the month earlier. So we're like, that's where we made it last time. And we were able to hike further this time. And we made it we did almost 18 and a half miles that first day. And we camped at around the north branch of West Stony Creek. There was a little campsite there. I believe that's where it was. And that we weren't able to reach a lean-to that night, which we knew we had. And we have a First Light tent. It's made by Black Diamond. It weighs around 3 pounds. And we knew we weren't going to have to we were hoping not to use that tent much. It's a very small tent, but it's awful light too. So that's where we were able to set up our first night and stuff everything in that tent and just hunker down for our first night. So
Sure. So you planned the first night would not be at the lean-to, so you planned for the tent. Because as I'm thinking about the trail and you guys camping at the West Stony Creek tent site, that's right after the 6.5 mile push on the map where there's just nothing in between Woods Lake and that campsite. So at that point, were you guys planning, maybe I will have to sleep on the side of the trail like you did the first time, or was there, in your brain, you guys kind of knew you were going to make it to that tent site?
Yeah, we were hoping to make it to that tent site because even though we had longer days now, it was getting dark, and we didn't get there till 7 at night. And I told Henry, the first 2 days are going to be our hardest days because we're getting adjusted to the life on the trail. And what happens is you tend to start a little later, end a little later your first 2 days. and then you start to get up a little earlier each day, and you end a little earlier. It makes each day a little earlier, a little easier, knowing you've had a little more rest period in between the time you stopped and the time you have to start again.
Sure. So how'd you guys feel once you got to the tent site the first night? What were your feelings physically and mentally that day?
Well, for me, I know that I was feeling glad that there was one trailhead we hit that said we were trying to go the last little bit, and it said 0.3 miles. And I said, okay, great, we got this. There were two things I was worried about the first 2 days. I knew if I could get through the first 2-3 days, then we'd have a good chance of seeing this through. The two things that were on my mind is one, cramping, because in order to train for this thing, I did some weightlifting and other stuff, but let's face it, I'm working 40, 45 hours a week. I have a family, I have a business, I'm married, and I can't get out and hike for 8 or 10 hours a day. It's not going to happen. Even if it could happen, I'm not going to do it. And so, although I should. And so I was worried about two things: cramping in my legs from going that far with a 40-pound pack. I don't carry that much weight usually, and also blisters. So I was worried about those two things. So after the first day, I was like, good, I'm feeling pretty good. But I know that last third of a mile, really, it was getting dark, and I was getting tired, and I knew Henry was too. I'll let him finish how he was feeling at this point.
Yeah, so when we were getting close to the campsite and we had seen the well, first I'll just say that the first day was definitely a bit of deja vu because we'd done it earlier, and I really felt a lot better once we had passed not only the river crossing but the campsite from where we'd camped before, because it was just reassuring that at least we'd made it farther than the time before, and we were feeling better, the conditions were better, and it really felt like a good omen for the trip as a whole. And then as it began to get dark and we hit the trail sign that said it was 0.3 miles to the campsite, it really felt like a lot longer to me, just because it was dark and I was tired, and it felt to me that we'd been going so long that I thought we'd passed it, because I couldn't imagine it being only 0.3 miles. But then we reached the campsite.
All right, yeah, great, sure. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, if I could add something in there. So we had been hiking, we're tired, we're everything else. I said, it's only a third of a mile, we're hiking, and it did seem longer than that. And finally, Henry just breaks the silence, and he had some choice words for thinking. He's like, there were no blank way this was only a third of a mile. He was not happy. And literally, we walked another 50 feet, and there was down this little hill, and there was the trailhead. So I got a little chuckle about that.
Yeah, I could imagine. And in my season on the Northville-Placid Trail here on the podcast, I mentioned many times that there is a large discrepancy throughout the trail of mileage from what the map says, what the signs say, and what any GPS you have with you is saying. There's constantly a major discrepancy, and sometimes some of the maps, what the map says versus some of the wooden signs on the trail, were more than a mile difference in real life. So yeah, that's a pretty constant, and it's funny because as you said that, I remember having this exact same conversation with these people I hiked this part of the trail with, James and Sarah, at this exact point. I know exactly what you're talking about, that 0.3 miles to the tent site, and it's not, for sure it's not. So I chuckled to myself as you guys were saying that, because I can relate to that very much. So yeah, understood. You're not the only ones who think that. But so day one seemed to go well. You guys got to your tent site. So you slept. I assume you probably went right to bed after you ate. So Henry, take me through day two. You guys started at the West Stony Creek tent site. Take me through day two.
Yeah, sure. So before I start day two, I'll just say that